And we can ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Yeah, that's yours last time.
By Ron, seconded by John. Any changes, comments? Doug?
Yeah, I'm voting against, approving the meeting notes from the last meeting. I think they were done illegally. We didn't have a full 6 people approving the meeting come into session. And so I felt that the meeting was done, outside of the rules and regulations of a meeting. So I'm going to, vote against approving the meeting notes from the last meeting.
Okay, any other comments? Rachel?
Is that, is that what happened last meeting? I know I came late to it, but do you have an opinion on that at all, the town attorney?
I have a recollection that there was a voice vote. The only vote in the voice vote were for affirmatively going into an executive session. When the chairman called for nays, there were no nays, so she declared an executive session. That's my recollection, in my opinion.
There's no ask for discussion though, and I believe you have to ask for discussion like the chairman's doing right now. And that was when we were going to discuss it, and boom, 3 people voted yay. There's no nays and no discussion was asked, and it was all of a sudden within 10 seconds, 15 seconds already in executive session, and I feel that's illegal. So, and I tried to address that right then when we went into executive session. And if you watch the video, you can see me starting to talk about that, and then the video gets cut. So, so I'm voting against this.
Any other comments? Okay, gonna call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And I'll have to abstain because I was not at the meeting. Okay. Want to start it off, Jeffrey?
Sure, actually, we want to skip down to the court expansion, project since we've got Clark Patterson here.
Okay.
We did receive bids on, phases 1 and 2 of the court project. So we wanted to have Clark Patterson, talk some about the bids received and their analysis, and then we can entertain awarding of contracts.
Okay, we want to turn it over to Matt or Maria?
Sure, I'll take it over. As Jeff said, the bids were received. We received a number of bids for each of the 4 contracts. Bids are shown up here on the screen. They were all pretty well within a reasonable range to see that they were competitively bid. Low bid for general construction was Bunkoff General Contractors. For mechanical, Family Dan's Mechanical. Plumbing construction is Collette Mechanical. And for electrical, J. McBain Incorporated. Total bid amount, $11,346,000. We reviewed the responsiveness of the bids. Everybody's bonds, insurances, and everything is in place, looks reasonable. We understand that all of these contractors are responsible, haven't found out any issues, any concerns with the contractors. As far as the budget for the phases 1 and 2, we were looking at, we had done independent cost analysis when we were at our design development stage, and at that point we got a cost estimate of about $13 million of where we were at. We looked to shave some off of that. We did some value engineering on certain things, and then got it down to the point where we were looking at, we were hoping to get it down as much as possible below that $13 million. And we did with the bids coming in at 11.3. So what we've got with the 11.3, the project soft costs that are anticipated, there's, long story short, with the $16.5 million that's been bonded, we feel confident that there's enough to do the full build out of these 2 phases and then the future phases 3, 4, and 5. So if we look at what we were at back when we were in the conceptual stage, which is the top table. At conceptual stage, we were looking at a new construction renovation square footage of 22,000 and 25,000 square feet respectively, at $260 a square foot for a new construction average and $190 a square foot for a renovation average. Applying a 18% and 20% contingency to those, and then putting in a lump sum number of $500,000 for the site work, we ended up at $13.3 million for total construction costs, 2.9 for soft costs, and then $300,000 for a bond contingency. So if we move forward into the second table here, which I'm gonna bring to the top, if I pull those numbers or pull those, multipliers out and just, so we can compare apples to apples, we would have been at $305 a square foot new construction, $228 a square foot renovation, $600,000 for site work. And again, those are average costs based on all work to be done. So if we go finally down to the lower table, if we look at what we've got for, if we say we've got new construction, now of course the 22,000 square feet that's going to be constructed in phase one is about as complex as we get, based on some of the needs. You know, you've got holding cells, you've got some technology needs, you know, just the nature of the courts. You're gonna be higher on the square foot cost. So we think that came in around $345 a square foot. The future new construction that's gonna be done in future phases, we're calling that, say, new construction, more of a standard construction. We still think $300 a square foot for that is reasonable. The renovation work that's gonna be done, this is a major renovation in phase two, because what we're doing is we're taking the existing family court space and we're opening that up to make a large courtroom. So we have structural work to be done with that. We've got basically a full gut with structural, some roofing work, removal of existing columns to open the space up. So we think that came in probably around $300 a square foot. And then if you look at the future renovation work that needs to be done, we've got some light renovation and then some cosmetic renovation. Square footage cost on those is anticipated to be much lower. For example, you've got a large courtroom, or a couple of large courtrooms, that really the bulk of the work in those courtrooms is going to be making them handicap accessible. So if you take a large square footage and you really don't do much other than making it handicap accessible, you know, your cost per square foot is going to be much lower. And then we think the site work, another thing to factor in, the site work came in higher than originally anticipated for a couple of reasons. One is we were talking about the possibility of the county doing some of the upfront work on site, such as relocation of the perimeter road. As we talked through the schedule and logistics, what was decided was probably better off having the county do some of the back end work, if possible, on the renovation of the future spaces, because that won't be as time sensitive. You know, we're going to want the relocation of the perimeter road site work. We don't want that to hold up the construction. And of course the county's demonstrated their ability to do some of that renovation with what they've done with the temporary court space that they've worked on here recently. And then the other thing with site work is it's really kind of a full build out, or for lack of a better word, of the north end of the campus. All of the parking is going to be redone. We're going to gain, got the number here, we're going to gain a total of 135 new parking spaces with all of that site work, on top of relocating the perimeter road. So if you look at the 11.3 here for phases 1 and 2, and then with the future phase work that's going to be done, add another 2.4, we think is a very reasonable number for that. Our soft cost number, that's another thing to factor in. That temporary entrance, we're putting a temporary entrance to accommodate the public access to the building. Talk to the contractor, that's about a $300,000 number, and really that's a soft cost. So put that into phases 1 and 2, take it out of the soft cost number. We've got the $2.6 million that's left over for soft costs is still within reason, still leaves $200,000 as a contingency to arrive at the 16.5. So long story short, we feel very comfortable with these bids and the contractors.
Questions? Ron?
So, how does this, budget, so what you're saying here today, if I'm hearing you, is that, do you feel the program that was originally outlined, that we, can complete the program for what was originally budgeted?
Yes, absolutely.
Doug?
Yeah, thanks. What contingencies are in place in case it goes over budget? I don't want the county, first of all, I'm not for this, as you know, but but I'm just asking this question, what happens if they come back and say, hey, you know something, we underestimated, it's gonna cost us an extra $500,000, so we don't get stuck with that, do we?
Are we talking about on these phases,
talking about
phases
anything.
1 and 2?
Yeah, I don't, you know, 16.5 million with 20 million bonding is, to me, obnoxious, especially when there's a lot lower alternative costs. This is a travesty to the taxpayers, but that being said, I wanna know if this number gets approved, and I'm sure the board will approve it, I wanna make sure that they're not gonna get jerked around again on when these guys coming back and saying, hey, oh, we were wrong. So are there things in place so we don't even get it higher than what it is?
Well, we've got our contract documents, I mean, these contractors bid these amounts to provide what's in the contract documents. So, there's no, you know,
They can never come back to us and say it's an extra $500,000, you gotta pay it.
they can't come back to, no,
Okay.
no.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff?
I'll just say that, this is no different than any other contract and any other construction project that we undertake. There are bid documents, that's what the numbers are based on. We do, at times, have to entertain change orders based on changed conditions. So, I wouldn't say that is done in a vacuum, that's why there's a project management team. We certainly have very qualified people monitoring the project. If there's some hidden condition that is discovered, through no fault of the contractor, then we'd be back to the board to talk about changes. Those change orders can also happen to deduct costs off of the project, and that happens on a regular basis. Certainly, in a perfect world, you just say, yeah, go do a contractor, and your hands off, and we're not paying them a penny more. But those issues, if they come up, would have to come back through the board for change orders. But
Jeff, just if I can, to address that and Supervisor Beatty's question, we also have contingency within their bids. We have allowances within their bids to address any potential missed items, overruns. So they've got, in the general construction contract, there's a $50,000 contingency, so that if they come back and they say, well, you know, you wanted, you know, something here, but we didn't see it in the documents, then we've got that allowance in there. And of course, one of the things we'll be looking for too, along the way, is that it goes both ways. So that if we had something in the general construction contract that said the general contractor was going to provide something, but then for whatever reason we also had it in one of the other contracts, sometimes you end up with a little bit of overlap. You're going to make sure you're going to say to the one contractor, hey, you're not providing it, you give us a credit for that back. So you end up with a little bit of making sure that everybody's, you know, that you, the county, have bought what's in the bid documents, but if you've bought it twice, or if you decide that something isn't needed, you're gonna get a credit back for that to balance everything out. To look for the opportunities to keep the cost where it is.
And that's consistent with how the Human Services building went. There were certainly changes during construction. In the end, the project came in under budget, and so to say that it's simple, more simple than that, I think is wrong. But you know, even the temporary core space that we did in-house, the minute we started opening up walls, we were changing things, because some of the original construction plans for the building didn't match actual conditions. So we opened up a wall and found a cavity, you know, 18-inch deep cavity where the wall had been doubled up at some point. So those types of things are less likely with the new construction, but this portion of the work involves significant work in the existing court area, and so when dealing with a building that's, you know, is the age of this and the plans as they are, things certainly get discovered in the course of the work. And with the field change order contingency that's in the contract documents, and with the team that we've got, both Kevin and his guys and Clark Patterson, that's exactly what engineers do, is manage that type of stuff.
Ron, you had a question?
Yeah, just, if we could discuss the green, area, the all, other phases. How comfortable are you now with that as a budget number on, the other phases? And maybe just very quickly, refresh our memory as to what is included in those all other phases that is, that the phase 1 and 2 are really dependent on.
Sure, yeah. Actually, for one of the things that makes us very comfortable with these numbers is the temporary courtroom renovation that's been recently completed. That came in total cost of around $352,000 for a 2,200 square feet of renovation, which is about $160 per square foot. And that renovation, as you've seen, was pretty extensive. You know, there was that mezzanine in there, and that had to come out. All the walls came out. It was a full rebuild, new walls and everything. So for that to come in at $160 a square foot, we think the $180 for a lighter renovation and $120 for a cosmetic renovation are really pretty reasonable numbers. And you want me to just touch on the future phases? Phase 3 at 3,600 square feet is the renovation of the jury deliberation and the judge chambers. Demolition of some partitions, doors, new openings in the masonry wall, and some new finishes. Phase 4 is the new construction. The 1,100 square feet is the refresh.
That is the court-ready addition to the criminal court.
Oh, that's right.
That's the only piece of the new construction. Originally, I think in that phase also we were including the construction of the surrogate road extension, but that got moved to phase 1 because of the constructability. We will be digging already at that side of the building, which truly would be impractical to leave a little portion of new addition off at this point from the construction site. So that already has moved to phase 1 and is included in that 11.2 million number. So what we are left in phase 4 is only the court-ready addition. That you have it correctly, that's 1,100 square feet.
Yep. And then there's gonna be the new sally port as part of that phase 2. There's gonna be a new sally port in the front of the building. And then the renovation of the county courtroom, that's 3,400 square feet. And then phase 5 is the renovation of the surrogate and county clerk's area, that's 2,000 square feet. And then the renovation of the large courtroom, which is 4,200 square feet.
Well, I'm just, wanna make sure that we don't have an unpleasant surprise, in completing. Then should we have an issue there, what you're saying is that phase 1 and 2 is impacted by just that access area, that access door, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I see.
And for the renovation of the 2 large courtrooms, we are talking about improving accessibility, but it is really minor. In the largest courtroom, we are looking at, I believe, a ramp to the jury box, because otherwise the courtroom itself is accessible from the main entrance, so we are just looking at improving accessibility within the courtroom and to the bench. And in the criminal courtroom, and I think we are looking at a list, but really no major redoing of the room itself, because it is pretty beautiful right now with all the wood paneling, and we are not looking at repeating of it.
Okay. Frank, as budget officer, you wanna comment? Do you have any questions, or?
Oh, it seems reasonable, seems like it's, in line with what was, anticipated. Let's hope it's good, that's it.
Okay, Michael, treasurer?
No, I wish it was less, but. Well, can get the money.
Mike, do you need to comment on how the path that we took in the bonding and where we're at with that? Are you comfortable with how you're doing that, and do we need to do anything preparatory as we award the bids, et cetera?
No, we're all set. There's original resolution for the 16.5 million. That's what you're saying is gonna be, the cost. So we already bonded 8 million, in the spring. We'll get the rest of the money. We're gonna roll in the, SUNY Adirondack money that we need in this one bond in the spring.
I'm in a meeting,
So that'll,
can I call you back?
so that we can, hopefully cut the costs on the interest. The only thing we're having a problem with right now is there was supposedly an interest, payment or, refund, I guess, from the courts as to bonding on this, and we have not been able to make contact with the proper people responsible, and the paperwork hasn't been done, and so I don't know where that's at. I talked to Kevin about that, we've tried to talk to, Ward Pelkowicz, and we've tried to make contact with the people of the court, but, so far unsuccessful.
But you'll keep after that and,
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
No.
And Chairman, you have any comment?
No, I mean, I, like everybody else, wishes the bids would come in a little lower, but we just need to be vigilant over the building project, and whoever is the clerk of the works needs to make sure that we don't take too many left turns. So,
Julie, are you happy with the procedure and everything, the way it came in?
Yeah, I just wanna note that we reached out to as many possible contractors as we could. We put it on the state network, we published it in Contract Reporter, our official newspapers. We sent out to every vendor we had on our list from previous projects. So I'm comfortable in that respect.
Okay. And the contractors, Matt, I asked you a little bit, before the meeting about this, you're comfortable with who bid it and moving forward?
We are, absolutely.
Which is one of the biggest deals.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, hearing none, we can move on.
If we wanna.
Do we want a resolution to pass on to the full board to award the contracts?
Yeah, we have, starting on page 9, 9, 10, 11, and 12, towards the end of the packet, are the resolution requests for the new contracts. So each of those match the individual contracts that Matt just went through on his last spreadsheet, on his last.
Okay, why don't you give us why don't you just go page by page, and we'll, if you wanna.
Okay.
That
Matt,
will let
can you-
everybody know what they're
Can you
acting
put it
in.
back to that last tab?
Sure.
On page 9 is a request to award contract to Bunkoff General Contractors. That's for $8.196 million. And you'll see on the screen the bids that were received, and they were the low bid for that portion of the work.
I'll move that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have motion on the floor, we need a second. Second by John, any more discussion? Hearing none, call the question, all in favor? Aye, opposed?
On page 10 is the Family Dan's mechanical contract. That's for WC 1716, in the amount of $1,222,650. Sorry?
Okay, motion.
$1,227,000, yep.
Motion to get it on the floor. By John, seconded by Matt, discussion. Hearing none, call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
On page 11 is a request to have a new contract with Colette Mechanical for $599,000.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor. Motion by Matt, seconded by Ron, discussion. Call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
And the last portion of the work on page 12 is awarded to J. McBain, Inc., for $1,323,940.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor. Motion by Matt, seconded by Evelyn, discussion. Hearing none, call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. I'm sorry, Peter?
No, just a quick question, were there any local, contractors that were involved or bid, just like, not having looked at any, for example, with Roselle,
Julie, do you wanna address that?
They all received it. All of our local vendors received the specification.
All the local vendors received it?
Yeah,
Did,
Roselle being one of them.
did they all reply, or it's on the sheet?
Yeah,
It's like
Gross Electric replied
Gross
also.
Electric, too.
Gross, Roselle.
We sent to all of our local vendors.
Okay. All right.
Okay, if there's no other questions regarding the court
Transfer
project.
to do, right?
I do, I have one.
Ron, I'm sorry?
Thank you. Just, relative to the schedule, you're on time, on schedule? We're on schedule. And you would expect shovel in the ground approximately, you have to give contractor mobilization before it goes through that process. What's your shovel in the
Yeah.
ground date? Do you have one?
Don't know yet, because we're going to the full board,
Friday.
Friday, okay. And then we'll get in touch with the contractors to let them know that, everything's in place, and then we're gonna try and move as quickly as we can. I don't have a date, but it's gonna depend on when they can mobilize. There are dates in the contract that give.
Yeah, I'll just say that we've been ready to move much earlier than where we're at now. But our next step is to get the resolution to award the contracts. Then it really is working with the county attorney to establish and sign contracts. And, so that can take some time. These aren't minor, contracts, so that can take some time. But we'll concurrently work with the contractor, with the prime contractor and his subs on, schedule, and work the schedule on what the contractor's intent is. And then we'll certainly be pushing them to get shovels in the ground as early as possible in order to do foundation work and leading into the winter to get, that's really our goal, is to get the foundation work done as early as possible this fall, early winter, so that the steel work can continue through the winter.
As soon as you have a schedule, if you can shoot that out to me.
We'll be giving monthly updates to the committee, I'm sure. Okay, if there's no other questions on the court stuff, then we can, thanks Matt and Maria
Sure.
for
Matt and
coming.
Maria, thank you
Appreciate
for coming.
You're welcome.
Be seeing a lot of you, I'm sure.
Okay, if we can, we have one fleet item that normally doesn't come through facilities, but, we can talk that if we want before we wanna get into the engineering
Okay,
review.
why
'cause I
don't you,
think
number
that'll be
3
fun.
there, the
Do you wanna go to?
reso
Frank, if
request, you wanna do that?
Address that?
The veterans van, not the large bus, but the smaller van, the transmission went in the van, and the shop in Warrensburg has an estimate of roughly $3,500 to fix it. They've also done some brake work and some other work on it, which if we do that, should give them another good amount of time on the van. So I've been asked to request it to be moved to the fleet budget. I'm not exactly sure why. It usually wouldn't come through the fleet budget. But if we could move, contingent funding of $4,000 into the A1620 fleet budget, then we can get the van back on the road and.
Yep.
Just to follow up on what Frank's saying, normally that type of expense would be charged to the individual department, and that van has not been part of the fleet system. So I think it's kind of a change in kind of how we're handling these, I don't wanna open up a can of worms for Frank to have to deal with every single department that needs to, conduct a repair. Normally, those repairs are done in our facility up in, DPW, and we back charge directly to the department. So I think there might be some confusion on how to handle this. I think the cleaner way to do it would be not to do the contingency transfer to the fleet code, but to do it directly to the veterans, budget, and then those would be back charged directly to the veterans budget, which is how we do it for all the other departments, with the exception of, sheriff's department and, public health, which are the fleet ones.
You wanna comment on that, or you want the
Well, this
treasurer?
is a standard repair job, it should go into the, repair code for veterans.
Why isn't it part of the fleet? You said it specifically.
You don't charge repairs to fleet, do you?
Yes, we do. The fleet has historically been public health and, sheriff's vehicles, right, Frank?
And the shared vehicles.
And the shared ones that are the vehicles that are kind of for public use, or for, any department to use when they need it, when they're down a vehicle, they need a vehicle. The other kind of, a vehicle here, vehicle there, each of the departments have handled those individually, and because they don't have larger fleets and they're not doing recurring purchasing, those have been handled kind of one-off. So.
The other thing is there are some benefits to the departments to register and take care of their own vehicles. There's reimbursements certain federal reimbursements to certain departments. Recently, I ran into the situation where I had to register a vehicle for building codes, and then come to find out they should register their own, so when I get that title back, I'm gonna have to transfer it again. So I think it's something we need to look at, either with the chairman or just to clarify the fleet policy a little bit on who should be doing what. Right
Okay.
now, it's a little confusing.
Yeah, John?
Well, for one thing, I can see Jeff's rationale, but that's not my question. It's just for a continuation of the same argument. My other question is not related to this, so maybe I should wait until we get this out of the way then. Or are you ready? My questions are simple. What year, Frank, is the van?
I'm not sure of the year of it.
No?
I know it's the older maroon colored van, and the Warrensburg shop said they can probably get another 10 years out of it with the transmission and the
So
brake
the
work.
rest of it's in good shape,
Yeah.
and you don't know how many miles it has on it? Is it a Ford, or?
Okay, back to the question at hand, is this, Jeff, is this resolution okay? This is gonna tip
Well,
over the apple cart here?
this
I know
resolution.
procedurally you have some trepidation here.
I would recommend that rather than transfer from contingency to the fleet code, we transfer to the veterans code.
Michael,
I would recommend the same thing, just
you would advocate that?
we're gonna be able to track it better that way and get, and I think we're setting a kind of a weird precedent there to do it that way, because we have not done it that way in the past. The money
Okay.
always goes to the department.
This is
and they
not a
charge
fleet
back.
vehicle either.
All
I
right.
think one of the reasons on this is that there might have been some federal money or veterans money to purchase that van. I don't think that the county paid for all of that van, which is probably why it's not part of the fleet.
Okay, Matt?
Make a motion to move that.
Okay, motion's on the floor, do we have a second by Matt? Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. The last big item to talk about is the discussion of our bid review for the engineering review of the Siemens project. And as you know, that's been underway, and it was discussed a little bit at the beginning of the meeting, the last meeting that was conducted to do the interviews. We do have an update on some of the ongoing discussions with the contractors, the contractor. I think that would be appropriate for executive, at least initially, to update the committee on the negotiations, the contract negotiations. I guess I would defer to the county attorney on that.
Go ahead.
It would, as it's a continuation of the discussion from the last meeting, if the committee deems it appropriate, it would constitute matters leading to the employment of a particular person or corporation.
Okay, we have a motion to go in executive session by Matt, a second by Jam, discussion? Rachel?
I guess, what would it hurt if we had that discussion in open session?
Say again?
What's the downside to having an open discussion about that?
I'm going to defer to Julie because that's the practice that the county has always adopted.
Yeah, we've always done interviews and negotiations and contract discussions in executive. The downside is that if we discuss something financially or something that was, just basically let out and other vendors find out about it, that could hurt the competitive nature of the vendor that we're discussing. So, that's the practice we've always followed.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor with a second. Any other questions from the committee? Travis, I'm gonna let you speak, 'cause, you look like it's very important.
Thank you. I do think it's important. What I would like to do is just to establish what the rules are, because
Could you just pull the mic, 'cause I
I'd just like to
apologize for my
establish
hearing is
what the
horrible.
rules are. In the last time we did this, you asked for a motion, you didn't.
she did, ask for a motion, ask for a second, and then a quick vote. The votes were not tallied. There was no call for discussion. Robert Rules is what we've adopted to conduct our operations here, and it seems like that was not followed. It also seems that this is an 11-man committee, and you need, therefore, 6 affirmative votes for any positive action. There were not 6 affirmative votes. And that's a fact. And you can go back in the video and review that. You can look at the minutes, and you can determine that. There was also a deviation from open meeting law, in my opinion.
Travis?
Yes?
If this is on the previous meeting, I'll give you time after we do our executive session to speak to this. But we have a motion on the floor in a second specifically to go in executive session.
Okay.
Unless you have,
My next point was
unless
going
you're
to address...
contesting that.
My next point was going to address specifically...
Did you get to that part?
Yes, the motion was to continue this meeting from the last one. So any discussion of the last one would be pertinent to this. But in particular, what was stated there was that the particular reason to go into executive session was to discuss the employment or credit histories of a particular individual. Now, this is meant, and is well documented in the law, to protect the privacy of people that might be subject to disciplinary actions, etc. If you try to even to stretch it to say we want to talk about the credit history of this company or something else, I can't imagine that you spent 3 hours talking only about that. If you did, I think you wasted an awful lot of time. But I don't know what was discussed in there. You must, under open meeting laws, follow that exception to the T. And if it starts to deviate from that exception, you must postpone discussion and go back into open session. We have a county attorney here. We have the chairman. The chairman, they both should be well aware of what Robert's rules were as far as discussion not taking place. Everyone should know that it takes 6 votes, which weren't there. And I just would like to know what kind of oversight we have over following the rules. So, again, I will leave because I'll follow your directions. But again, it'll be in protest, and I will be submitting a 4-page complaint to the clerk at the conclusion of this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Rachel?
I just, in light of what Travis has said, but also in the recent weeks, there's been a lot of focus through the Post-Star and other news media about open meeting laws, particularly as it related in South Glens Falls. I have had a chance to talk a little bit with our county attorney about it, and I'm going to oppose going into executive session based on those conversations and the information that's been provided to me.
Okay. Anyone else? John?
You go into executive session for several reasons. In this case, we were interviewing contestants for the same job. And you're asking questions which would be unfair if the others had known of the questions themselves. And that would have given an unfair competitive advantage to others. In addition to that, it was brought out that we didn't even want the others to know who were in the bidding process. So there was a sense of privacy for the attainment of a sense of fairness in all of the executive session. So that is all in line with the intent and purpose of New York State's executive session law.
Okay, motion and a second is on the floor. We'll call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, we'll move into executive session. Go ahead and frame the resolution now.
So the request before the committee would be to award new contract to Bergman Associates for a total amount of $23,800. And that's
Okay.
based on... based on the proposal and, negotiations, the terms negotiated with Bergman.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor by Matt, seconded by Ron. Discussion.
All of the dates are, they said they would comply with them, start, and we'd have an answer by November 30th.
They've got a draft issue being issued in, 8 weeks upon receipt of the background materials, so I think we've got a pretty good handle on the background materials to get those to them immediately. So I would anticipate, having this complete, at least in draft form, within 2 weeks after contract signed.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I was just wanted to remind you that one of the points here is that there's a payment due December 1st of $260-some-odd thousand to Siemens, and, the contract says that you are under no moral or legal obligation to make that payment, but obviously all of you would want to feel assured that before you withheld money, you did it for good reasons, and I think the whole purpose here is to see whether you have a good reason or not. So to be getting just the initial report back a day before you have to decide on whether or not you're going to send that check out, he can confirm the date, I think it's December 1st, is it when it's due. I don't think leaves you enough time to meet what this whole thing was about. Back in January, the chairman was given full responsibility to make he could have made his choice the next day. He didn't have to wait for all this. I respect him for doing all this, but I think it's gotten out of hand, and I think the whole point of why you're doing it has been missed and maybe lost.
Okay, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We have one opposed. Okay, then we have some money movement, you said?
Yes, to follow up on that, we'd request a transfer from contingency to the Buildings and Grounds, contract code, which is 1620.470, in the amount of $380. That would augment the original. $3,800. That would augment the original $20,000 that was already authorized and transferred.
Got a motion by Ron. We need a second. Second by Evelyn. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? One opposed. So moved. You have any referrals or?
No new referrals or anything.
You good? Does anyone else have anything to come before the Facilities Committee meeting? Having done, a motion to adjourn. By Matt, second by Ron. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Try to.
So moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.